the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports.
From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports Podcast. I am Paul the Prophet Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, the Honorable Judge Jimmy Baratta. For those of you who are new here, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. For our regular listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for all the love, the 5-star ratings and reviews. If you haven't yet, go leave a review on the podcast, or even better, share it with a friend. It's how the podcast has continued to grow, and we really appreciate it. Jimmy, how you doing this week?
Paul, having a great week. You're not going to like it, but I am playing so much Apex Legends on mobile. It's ridiculous.
Oh, no, come on. You do this to me right at the top of the show. I'm excited. I want to get into it.
Start.
And you stick me with this mobile stuff? Is it actually that good?
Oh, it's not that it's that good. It's that because, until Apple comes out with their handheld controller that we covered on the live show a few weeks ago, I still am using the Razer Kishi. And when you have an advantage like that, I'm getting like 20 kill games. You can't walk away. I have a hack. That plus Bloodhound with the wall hack. It's just unfair, and I'm cleaning up. I probably am winning 80% of my matches, and you can't buy success like that. Well, I guess you can if you have $100 in a Razer store, but
I was going to say you sort of did.
It's too good. So it's too much fun.
This is what this is about. This is an ego boost, is what this is. That says nothing about the
wins
game.
where you can find them.
I will say, it's funny because we talked last week about EA, shopping itself around. There were more rumors this week. I'm sure we'll get to it on the weekly news show. For those of you who are, who don't know, we do a live weekly news show every Wednesday evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. But more rumors, and it looks like Apple may actually be the front runner, which is interesting, right? All your dreams may come true. You may get the controller. You may get Apex, as part of Apple Arcade. Who knows? You may get all of the above, Jimmy. So,
we'll see. It
makes you happy. I don't know how I feel about it, but
it's good. It's good for the industry. It's good for the game too.
I haven't tried it yet. I will say, I'm a fan of Apex. I played Apex essentially professionally. Got an offer from a tier 1 org. But I refuse to try it on mobile. I will, just to say I did, and so I can at least talk about it. But you know how I feel about these things. There's part of me that doesn't want to see it succeed on mobile, so that we have an example of something that should only live on PC. But I think it's inevitable that this is going to generate a ton of money for EA. So. Good on them. And if it means more games that are developed for PC first, because they're going to cash in on mobile, I'm all for it. And flattering your ego, Jim. That's important to me too.
I would start with that one, but yeah, the other stuff is nice too.
All right, let's jump into. We have such great guests on the podcast this week, Jimmy. I don't want to waste any more time. I don't want to waste one more second. We have on the podcast this week Scott Norcross, who's a partner at KJK Law, and Paige Rabatin, who's an associate there. Scott and Paige, welcome to the Business of Esports Podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Guys, for those of you, for our listeners, for our viewers who don't know much about you or maybe about KJK, would love a bit of the background, both of your backgrounds, how you got into this, the interest in gaming, where it came from, what you guys are focused on as it relates to gaming, a little bit of that gaming story for both of you and as it relates to KJK.
So, it started a while back for me. We have been with KJK for about 3 years now. And we came over really dedicated to starting a esports practice in the Midwest. We're located in Cleveland, Ohio, and essentially wanted to plant a flag in the Midwest and start a national esports practice here. And we had that opportunity given to us by KJK, and that's where we came from in that sense. And we're both housed in our corporate group, but we do, if you would look at our website, have a dedicated esports practice that is both split into essentially two wings. We have what I'd say is sort of the corporate, everyday outsourced in-house counsel aspect of that, and then we have a real estate arm, really focused on arena and LAN center development. In my personal story with regard to esports starts about 10 years ago. As a younger attorney, I had the ability to represent some NFL players in the past and traditional athletes. And I was fortunate enough to have one of them ask me to start his first esports team. At the time, the last time I'd probably gamed or done anything was probably on my dorm room floor, quite frankly, and was not completely versed in it, but I knew how to fundamentally protect this individual from any risk with regard on the business side from it. But that really sprang out, and it became an opportunity for me to be in writing player contracts for his team. I began to do social media contracts, build out teams, work on existing tournaments, redo the entire corporate structure for the team, do a rebrand, marketing, really do things that really had nothing to do with my law background, but really was thrown in sort of headfirst into what that was, and by word of mouth that began to spread that we were doing more and more esports related work, and that piqued my interest, and it was very exciting with regard to that. It meshed very well from the traditional athlete side as well, and then coming 3 years ago, it had kept growing, and I really wanted to and began with working with Paige about that at the same time, and really wanted to grow that practice as much as I could at this point.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then mine just sounds almost like a big repeat of what Scott says, because I've worked with him my entire legal and gaming career. So it was about 5 years ago that I started working with Scott, and like he was saying, he's was in the gaming industry representing different athletes. I kind of started off with that. And like I said, at the beginning, it wasn't the major focus of what I was working on with him. But then as he had more assignments, as we had more things to go after and do together in the gaming industry, it kind of became a larger part of my focus in both my legal practice. And then obviously outside of that, even now, because of the consulting work Scott and I have been able to do, the different work on real estate developments, separate companies we have or we work with now. So it just has taken over my life completely. And I grew up gaming. I have two brothers. I've had fistfights over a Sega before in my life. And so getting able to kind of come full circle and bring it back and be part of my working life now has been really great.
Guys, it's such an interesting story. And, I'd love to understand how, where you spend most of your time or how the focus is split, right? Like, and what I'm trying to get at is sort of where are you most excited, right? Is it the talent stuff? Is it the real estate stuff? Like, where are you seeing the most activity, I guess? The beauty of you guys is you have this sort of bird's eye view, right, of everything sort of happening.
Yeah, right now, I would say in the last probably year and a half for us, I would say the real estate and sort of land center arena side has really blossomed. That's not to say that working with talent and that has not been a focus, but it has really exponentially grown. We went from working on one project at Cedar Point to now upwards of 6 to 7 nationally with regard to that. And it really it fell out of COVID, to be honest. So we partnered and worked with one of our a good client architect of ours, O Sports, and through the pandemic had time on our hands and really began to look at how an arena would function, how a LAN center function. But we did it from both design, and then we also paired it with the business side. So we were focused, Paige and I are focused on how does that aspect, generate revenue? How does it interact with the gamer? Is that space quiet? And that's where we really focused, and we tweaked the design each go around we looked at adaptive uses for things like malls, movie theaters, a commercial floor plate like the office that we're sitting in. Could we use that for an esports or tech related venture? And really focused on that. And in doing that, generated sort of a large deck based in what we thought the best uses of those spaces were, and then really began sort of, I guess, preaching our gospel with regard to what we thought with regard to those spaces.
So I love this because what you guys are essentially sharing is using your legal brain, but operating more so as a consultant in business development and in real estate, right? So I'm curious, if we could dive into the real estate part of your services just a little deeper. You'd mentioned Cedar Point. I think we had talked earlier about Forge 417 off air. Would love and happy to have specific examples, or if some of this is too confidential or proprietary to those clients, maybe more vaguely just with your overall experience in opening land centers, as well as your analysis regarding that process. Curious what the most common pitfalls are, what some of the learnings are for our audience that are, in that space as well, or that might be looking to open their own land center or adding that type of vertical to their business. What are some of the low-hanging fruit as to, couple of the missed, highlighted points that you can advise?
Yeah, I think. Sorry.
Go ahead, Paige. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, starting off with probably, like you said, the low hanging fruit of maybe pitfalls itself is Scott and I really took a deep dive into the Tuesday afternoon problem is kind of what we call it. Of you see so many real estate ventures or so many land centers or things being open to where there's so much downtime, or even these major arenas that are out there, and you realize like how often are they sitting completely empty. And so being able to work with that programming to fill in almost every single minute of every day and figure out what pieces can fit in where and what spaces can double for different things combined and things like that. That has been kind of one of the biggest things that we've been focusing on to make sure that before we open something, we actually know who all is going to be coming through at what times.
I think also we begin to look at, sort of from the low hanging side, what is the general drive of the facility? So is it entertainment driven? Is it competition driven? Is it education driven? And who are we really programming to when we build them? And some of that comes with size and client and that, but that really then informs the program when we take a look at it. And so what, ultimately it is that, what is the arena size? Are we building something like Cedar Point that has 1,500 seats in it? And so now we're having to look at that multi-use nature of an arena. Or are we building something that is going to be more like Forge 417 that is 300 seats with regard to that, a little smaller floor plate, a little more community based there? Because I think fundamentally we look at everything is really a grassroots approach. One thing that Paige hit on is this idea of sort of what are we going to do on that Tuesday afternoon? And I think we begin to look at things a little differently outside of the box, and we look at things like workforce development in our gaming hubs and things of that nature.
Are you seeing different demographics of people depending on the size of the facility? And similarly to Paige's first point about filling time, what can you tell about who or what type of events have been successful drivers of engagement and butts in seats, so to speak, getting people to watch or to come to that facility, and also applying that to different demographics, that different events, maybe a Friday Fortnite or a Wednesday Fight Night or an open bar or whatever, because obviously different events, different things will target different types of gamers and people. Just curious to dive into this just one step further as to what do you see specifically with regard to the events that you guys are recommending or advising or throwing, as well as the different types of gamers that you're seeing, because there's no one size fits all model, right? And there's no one gamer that's going to come every single day. So just very curious as experts in this, what you guys have seen with the facilities you've opened.
I think from that perspective, I think what's successful is, I think to your point, it fundamentally hits programming. So to it, not one size fits all. I think that we are looking at, we are looking at everything from, and what we see success in is programming both for sort of that what I would say is more like the beer league style gaming event, where it's going to be that Friday night, COD tournament, or to that same Thursday afternoon now, where we're going to bring in and do a Rocket League set for the high schools with regard to that. But that fundamentally starts with the people that we work with when we look at the GM for that facility, and the person and those people, making sure that they are essentially, and we're working with them to sort of program out every day from that, and looking at the turning point in that day where it switches. So from till 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it may be very driven by high school and collegiate esports. With regard to that, after that point, we may be at that point really turning a focus on entertainment side and that casual gamer coming to that. But I think that we are beginning to see more and more where that aspect also fits into sort of the gambling and entertainment side of that. So the wagers between gamers in groups, and making sure that for instance, that Friday fortnight has a decent pot associated with it to drive people with butts and seats.
Yeah, and I would even go a step further with what Scott was saying of, we really do have a fine-tooth comb when looking through the community when we're going to put a center in somewhere, or whenever we're helping people with a certain area, because someone who's wanting to go pair it with a casual drink or have be more of the entertainment, like Scott was saying, they don't want to take a 35-minute Uber outside the city. That we need to look and see what is already around, what's being offered, what's missing in this area. We have a facility that we work with that has a community college right nearby, and they're really interested in being able to program and have that educational component and kind of assist us with the Tuesday afternoon problem specifically. They can have classes, they can utilize some of the spaces and be able to start teaching people who may want to be in the esports industry more long-term and might need to have be able to dig into what they can do on their PC with broadcasting, with things like that. And so that's been really helpful to find success there, to really mix that balance and already look at what's existing. So we're not just creating something that's already there.
And then on the other side of that spectrum, when we talk about the community base, then we have, we're working on one right now that's it's essentially very high end speakeasy style. From the outside, you'd never know what was there, but when you walk in, it's 5,000. It's only about 5,000 square feet, but it's the entire facility is essentially broadcast ability. It's like walking into a studio. It's essentially opening the Wizard of Oz. You walk through the curtain, highest end gaming equipment, bottle service to your stations, with regard to that super plush all over, and it's a whole different vibe with regard to that one. So we're kind of, that's the crazy part about what we're getting to do now, is we're getting to see sort of every end of the spectrum when it comes to that real estate development.
That's so cool. We've talked on this podcast about like the high end of these kinds of spaces, and it's nice to see that people are actually thinking about it or building them. I just wanted to touch on 2 things, guys. KJK, I among other specialties, I heard sort of 2 focus areas right off the bat, which I think are unique, right? There was this Midwest focus and this real estate specific esports offering or practice. What are your thoughts, just very generally, about both the future of physical spaces for gaming and esports? Because I think coming out of COVID, a lot of people, have at least expressed the opinion that this is a more difficult business now. People, are more afraid. And the Midwest piece is, we've had people on the podcast, and it's not the first time I've heard sort of love for the Midwest and passion for building out esports in the Midwest. But I'd love to understand sort of where you see that market going, because I do think it's interesting and it's unique.
Paige, you want to take that first?
Yeah, I can start. I guess I'll start by saying I understand people's skepticism, especially post-COVID. Like you said, the people who are either scared or find it unnecessary to go out or things like that. But I'd say I think we're still finding success, or we are still enjoying opening spaces like this, because I think people are never going to give that up as as a whole. Regardless, at the same time, like I could have a beer for half the price in my house, but I still want to go to the bar and have it with people around sometimes or with my friends there, and being able to have everyone. And I think this gaming can kind of fit into that same application. As fun as it can be in your own house or to just be online with people, like going and having not only the crowd around you, but also the ability to participate in competition. Even if it's just I'm walking into a facility and I can see I'm on a leaderboard, not necessarily a tournament style. That's something that people like and can grasp onto. Just like that, just having that ability to have that around you, I think that's why it hasn't slowed down our real estate development there. And I won't lie, I can't even remember part 2 of your question now that I've started talking.
Just esports in the Midwest and the view there, the long-term view there, right? Are we going to be talking about that market in the same way we talk about, gaming in LA these days, right? Like people think about major esports or gaming centers. You think maybe LA, you think, there's some in Texas and Austin. You think, right, I'm just curious where the Midwest in your minds fits into the overall gaming and esports picture.
I think that from a gaming esports picture, I think it could be as strong as the West Coast or East Coast with regard to that. I think if you were to look at it from an objective standpoint, is to look at what they're doing locally within high schools and colleges within the Midwest when it comes to sort of that grassroots function of gaming. Just within where we're sitting in Cleveland, you're going to see, I could list 150 high schools that currently have a program for esports in there.
Wow.
I would go to say almost every single college in Ohio, at least right now, has an esports program. Paige and I currently sit and just spoke at the University of Akron's esports program, really in their School of Business, quite frankly, as to a certificate that you can now earn within their School of Business with regard to esports management. With regard to that, Miami University has a very strong program here, but really you can name a university there. So if you take that fundamental base and say, can you not, and you look at, do those same students, same people want jobs within the industry? Do they want to grow their own businesses and be entrepreneurs? I think the answer is yes. And I think that if you look at places like Cleveland and Chicago and Pittsburgh, they have great fundamental gaming bases that I think are basically ready to explode with regard to that. You just, and why we did it is you need people to plant that flag and say, we're going to do it here. We're going to be that third spot to come and sort of take that mantle.
I would agree. We have the drive here, especially like Scott and I are up here in Cleveland. We see people around us. They're excited. And I would even echo too that Columbus itself is super tech heavy at this point. We have different companies we've worked with that are super interested in gaming, super interested in expanding it. We have worked on multiple occasions with eFuse, with Matt Benson down there, who originally started off at Ohio University and has moved to Columbus with his business. And so we have kind of the stronghold already of businesses that are here, people who are here that want to see this expand. And I think they want to see it expand here. They don't just want to go out and move to different cities or different hubs that are already in existence, because we can build it here. And that means we can make it what we want here.
I love this conversation as we're kind of getting into, I think, scholastic esports in a way, a little bit from your work in real estate. What I've noticed in my own personal experience working with colleges is how there's no set uniform kind of system for competing in esports. There's a lot of different, I think, opportunities, and a lot of schools have different structures. Some have directors, some have clubs with academic advisors. And I don't want to get too much in the weeds there, but I know the two of you do quite a bit, and Scott had mentioned, your initial experience in setting up leagues for some of your traditional entertainment properties and clients that wanted to launch teams and leagues. I know you guys are doing a little bit of work. I don't want to say a little bit because I don't want to diminish it, but you're doing work on the Valorant League. Would love to learn more about the work that you're doing from that perspective on rules, on tournaments, on organizing competitions, what it's like to work with Riot and this upcoming Valorant League that everyone's talking about and excited about. So if you don't mind, I just want to switch gears here. and learn a little bit more, because you guys cover so much. I don't think we're going to get to all of it today, but I want to hit as many points as we can.
So I think, just to sort of hit the sort of the top end of that point with regard to sort of the scholastic side, one of the things that we've been able to enjoy is that ability now to, start to work with universities and high schools about, and from our consulting side, is how to build that program. So we are, depending on where that is essentially housed in the university, is it in athletics or is it in student life with Greta? And quite frankly, we see most of them sort of housed in student life. Is now, how do you grow that program? Can you monetize that program? What are the leagues and governance in and around it? That you begin to, it is ultimately a co-ed sport. So it's, essentially governed in a different way. And so that has allowed us to be able to sort of grow out a program to, work with those both universities and high schools in doing that, as well as, is begin to do their leagues and really coming from that, when you mentioned Valorant, that has really, really has taken a lot of our time in the last few weeks, quite frankly, and months ahead, is beginning to work with Riot, with one of our long-term teams who has that opportunity to essentially, become a team in that league. And what is interesting, I really think, the way that Riot's doing it is from what we can say, is that I think it's really fair to the teams, and I think there's a real chance for profitability for those teams within there. And I think they are very focused on the orgs in that sense. And in the old-fashioned sense, I think they're looking at it as, all boats will rise in high tide, essentially, in that. And I think they're trying, and what they've learned from League as well is influencing what they're doing in Valorant. And we got to sit in and went through a presentation with Riot about a week ago at this point, and I was impressed, sort of one end to the other, as to how they're approaching this there. And we're deep into, at this point, putting together sort of the second phase with our team as to their sort of deck and application as they go through. So it has been extremely exciting working through that process.
Guys, I want to switch gears a bit here. I want to talk about the talent management piece because I think that's fascinating. And Scott, your experience of a traditional athlete coming to you saying they wanted to start an esports team. I'm curious, what is, if when this happens today, what is your advice to traditional athletes? Like, are you seeing a lot of them knocking down your door, coming to you saying they want to do something in esports? Are you having to educate them and convince them? Do traditional athletes, the ones that you've worked with at least, get what's going on in esports, and are they all excited about it, or is it something that you really have to sort of bang them over the head with?
I wouldn't say I have to bang them over the head in any way. In the current state, I would say when I was initially I was fortunate that the athlete that came to me was a gamer at heart anyways. And so the interest was already there. And he was well ahead of the curve, so to speak, with that. I think currently when we have that happen, there is education there. And the education really comes into, we just talked about this, is that not everything is a winner in esports, right? It's a business ultimately, and an analysis has to be done from that standpoint. So, it's the difference between, are you running it as a business? Are you running as a hobby? And those are two different approaches. In your hobby, you may be willing to actually sacrifice or lose income, revenue, however you want to look at that. If you're running it as a business, you're maybe looking at ROI completely differently in that. And I think that sometimes shapes our conversations with athletes there. And then it's really, what are you looking for? Like, how do you want to be involved in the space? That's what's changed since my outset in this. Is in first starting a team, that was one thing. Now there are so many ways to be involved in the space. I mean, from content creation to team or organization, or just plain old investor, quite frankly. in this to the land space. So there's just so many different facets that now make it exciting to be part of.
And I think even beyond athletes that have come to us or that we've talked to or worked with, there's from people and potential clients in general, I think there's two categories that sometimes stick out of people who either love gaming, love the space, know everything possibly about it, but maybe don't know how to make it a business. Or there's other people that know everything about business and see that there's some business there for gaming, but doesn't have any idea what the space is about. And so sometimes it's about putting those people together, telling them what they still need to be a part of their team, or just kind of coaching them through it ourselves and working with them to see like, okay, what's actually going to be beneficial here for you and make your business worthwhile.
Paige, that's super fascinating. I want to dig there a bit deeper. Do you find those two groups need each other more than they realize? Or is one group usually more successful than the other? You know, we, again, sort of recurring theme on the podcast is the gaming industry, not just esports, but gaming as a whole, has been built on the backs of, mostly gamers, people who know gaming very well, and not, it's relatively recent where the industry has gone mainstream in a way that it attracts outside, call it attention, right? From just general business people who are looking to make a dollar. I'm curious, do those two groups need each other in your mind? And in your experience, what's the better place to start from, the esports knowledge or the business knowledge?
I think there's definitely that pool of they need each other. Not always. I think sometimes you can learn the other side, but obviously with this industry and as a whole, like with reaching out to people and making sure that you're authentic is obviously a big thing that everyone I think has talked about under the sun. And you're right, not just being the person being like, I think there's money there, I'm just going to dive head first, and I think everyone will accept me. So they do need each other. And I think that it can be easier from what I've looked at to have someone who knows the gaming industry itself or understand what's going on and being able to work with them to make it a business, or to find someone at least that can work with them and has some business knowledge. Whereas I think it can be a little bit tougher for people from the other side who have that strong business knowledge and kind of know what gaming is, or kind of like want to dip their toe in but don't know it well enough, and finding someone that they mesh with in the gaming industry. Solely because like it can take a little bit of a leap of faith at times where it's right. You're right. This person who I'm trying to bring to you right now that is not in a suit, cannot provide some sort of degree saying they know exactly what they're talking about, but is telling you to take risk because they truly understand this industry. You need the person that's business savvy to be able to take that leap and understand it, and just kind of understand that, no, we can't prove 15 years of the past showing that this is going to be profitable, but I can tell you that this person and what they're saying seems amazing and that they're like super forward looking. And I think that's a big thing that we need to find and that we need to be able to pair together in this industry.
What can you share
I love
about
this.
Oh, sorry, Paul. Go for it.
Oh, hang on, Jimmy. I just wanted to make the comment. I love this because in my experience, the greatest lawyers are in some ways the best matchmakers, right? And as someone who's an investor for like 2 decades, some of the best deal flow I ever saw was from my lawyer, right? Like the law firm that I worked with would send me, oh, I'm working with this startup. He's a great entrepreneur. You should meet him, right? And I love that you talked about this kind of matchmaking. And one of the benefits of going to KJK or to you guys would be that kind of matchmaking, right? Because you sort of have that 30,000 foot view, and you know all the players, and you know who has what knowledge and who has what experience. I think that matchmaking is really, it's undersold as a reason to work with a law firm. It's one of those big benefits that I think a lot of people don't realize. Sorry, Jimmy, go ahead.
No. I mean, Scott and Paige, please speak to that if you'd like. Obviously, as to the deal flow and the ability to network between clients and opportunities, and I can table mine for later.
No, I appreciate that, Paul. I mean, I think that we look at what we do is from whether it is a player or a team or a investor, we're generally, the first things out of our mouth is that our goal is to put the best team around them that may not even include us at times. So whether that is a marketing person or another person within esports, whether that's an accountant, that's what we're trying to do, or pair them with an investor that we've come across. That at heart, that I think that makes us as happy to help someone to do that than it does to be at the heart of a large M&A deal in esports, quite frankly, with that, it is to make sure that we want to make sure that people around us are successful. To your point, as to how we grow it in the Midwest, is to make sure that everyone's experiences that they have in the industry are successful experiences, or they leave with a positive reflection of their interaction with KJK or within esports. And I think that's the goal of that. So that's, I think, where we can be the best matchmakers.
And we can be the best matchmakers as well as we'll take a holistic approach to it. I think that people don't realize that from working in the gaming industry, Scott and I, we always talk about all the time that we almost feel like we're disadvantaged by being attorneys at times because people are like, I don't want to deal with the attorneys. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to do anything. But to not realize, like, one, we've been in this for so many years that I feel like as Scott, I think, said earlier, like half the time we're not even doing traditional legal work anymore. We're working with other groups. We're working with people that aren't just within that realm. Like yes, there's the financial person we can put around you. There's all kinds of different things like that. But I've also matched people with photographers who I truly think understand and can take great pictures of people playing video games for different professional teams that's not going to just have someone sitting there looking bored, staring at an imaginary TV screen. We've matched, like, obviously we work with architects, things like that people might not even think about, that we've built those relationships that we're now able to piece together.
Yeah, it's very cool. Jimmy, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, along the same discussion, and I love the point, Scott, that you made about, opportunities for clients or for friends or businesses that you work with that sometimes don't even involve you or Paige. For our listeners that, don't yet have the access to your services that are maybe are in other deals, what red flags would you advise as like, hey, that's actually an opportunity or a situation or something that commonly happens where maybe that one of those companies needs to recuse themselves the way you guys do? It's kind of a less fun topic, but I think it's a more important one because there's a lot of deal flow happening, right? There's a lot of connections being made. And perhaps you can give a vague anecdote as to a time where you said, maybe we have conflicting interests here because of other properties that we're representing, or however you want to interpret that question. But I would just love some red flags as to, if you're in this situation, you might need to take a second look at it.
So there's two sort of vague situations I can sort of allude to that off topic that have happened very recently. So, I was approached by another attorney that I know, asking me about an investment in an esports related entity that I was very close to the founders on, that he did not know, quite frankly, with regard to that. And and what that led me to do is I gave my opinion as to the group and the investment in the business altogether, but I also disclosed right at the outset, look, I have known the founders for many years now, and so I may be too close to the situation, but then gave a recommendation of other people he could go to for references with regard to that, and make sure that what I'm saying is accurate and be checked out with regard to that. And I essentially passed on any further interaction in that investment, even though I could essentially match that. And then the same thing happened in a real estate situation with regard to a land center. I had land centers that are very closely related with regard to that, and had to basically just openly disclose, look, I have an interest in this land center very close to where you're going to put, you want to put one. And I think that you probably don't want me to give you advice on that, and with regard to that, because I'm personally invested in it. So, but and I'll happily disclose to that client everything I can within my bounds to do that. But then pair them with people that I think could help them if they still wanted to go that pathway there. And I think that's once I feel like I'm maybe too close to that situation, or I'm personally conflicted because I'm either invested in it or something along those lines, I'm better served by just disclosing that from the outset, obviously, there. So those two, and it's funny they mentioned, because those two happened within the last 30 days. So there.
But it sounds like initial disclosures was a good, or probably
I would say that's
start,
my
right?
I mean, my advice would be just disclose it right off the bat. That use that initial disclosure to do that. And look, as a lawyer, I could do things like get a conflict waiver. I could, if I really saw that I wanted to be involved in that opportunity, or the clients wanted our firm to be, there are ways that we could essentially achieve success by getting a conflict waiver and doing things like that. But I would, to your point of the red flag, it's really just discovering that from the outset, disclosing that, and then working with that group to see if there is either a way to work around that, or just making sure you make that right recommendation right from the outset. So,
Paige, I have a specific question for you, and this is maybe a bit of a silly question, but I'm curious because you guys are working on a bunch of different things, right? You're doing real estate stuff and talent management and centers and all these different projects and different clients. What are some of the most fun, or what is the most fun, right? Like what are the projects that you're most excited about and that you can't wait to sort of get into?
So right now, I think the most exciting for me is the live events that I think we have on the threshold, or that Scott and I are working to pitch, not only either to bring to Cleveland or the Midwest, because we have obviously a varying size of different either land centers, arenas, things like that opening. And not only is it almost time to start building out the programming in the future for certain ones that are going to open, to see exactly what's going to be coming in and what can we get in this space, things like that. But also seeing, okay, what venues are already around in certain areas that can be utilized for live massive gaming events, and what all, like similar to what we were talking about before, what teams can I bring together? Who do I already know that's going to really be able to make this a success, and is going to see what's necessary that can be complementary to not only, obviously there are things that Scott and I know, but there are things that we have no idea how to run. And so being able to bring in those groups and those teams that really have a good hold on things like that. And so I really want to see these massive live events come to fruition that Scott and I have been working on and trying to put together.
And are you guys dealing at all with the game developers in this? We talked about Riot, but the publishers themselves, is a lot of your interaction there when it comes to live events, or are you thinking more on are you spending more of your time on with the architects, with the business people, with how much do the publishers play into some of the things you're doing on the live event and real estate side?
I mean, from a publisher side, I think they play. From a percentage side, they play a huge percentage of that. I mean, they can dictate, to some extent, what a stage is going to look like, how the game can interact, how live play is handled. They are as fundamental to a live event as the architects, as Paige or I. Next to the players and the teams, that interaction with developers, in my opinion, is just as important that at this point. So
exactly, and being able to involve them, or like Scott was saying, they can dictate all kinds of different things about it, and that's what makes these events that we can put on so much more unique, or kind of a more extensive puzzle to get everything pieced together. Because, like I said, they could not want you to either do certain things. They might not even want you to play their game. And it's different than, I can find someone who's planned things for the NBA or different professional athlete events. But at the end of the day, no one owns basketball. I guess you could say possibly the NBA owns basketball, but not quite. But anyway,
we could start our own league if we really wanted to.
Exactly. I could start my own league. I could have my own rules. I could do whatever I wanted to tweak it. However, there's someone that owns what was going to be the major draw here. And so there's someone that you need and want to make happy, because also you never want a one-off event. You never want to have, this is all I'm going for, putting everything in here. You want an inaugural event that's just going to keep on going. And so that's kind of the bigger thing, is making sure that all of the people and the developers in general are happy with what's going on.
We just got a question when we were at the University of Akron about Smash and what could we do in and around Smash, and how does is working with Nintendo and in that, and what the drive behind could there be a league, and really it was interesting for us to kind of, because it hasn't been something in the past that we've done now it's growing more is sort of the fighting game scene, and really digging into that culture that it is that there. And it was really eye-opening to me to talk to the students and talk to the people in and around that space, because as I said, I've come out of really originally started out of more of the one-on-one shooters, out of Call of Duty, out of that. And so to really go down that pathway has been a really new sort of pathway for us there.
I mean, this is a discussion we've had many times, and the walled gardens of the publishers are always a bit of a sticking point, right? And how you navigate around them is tricky. It's it requires expertise, it requires good relationships, but I don't know if this will ever go away, right? Paige, to your point, it's not like basketball. Fortunately or unfortunately, the publishers will always have this level of power and influence.
But I think if you can be a good partner of theirs, I think that's where we come from. Can you ultimately be a good partner for them? What benefit, what benefit can we provide them? Ultimately, the goal is to help the success of the title, right? Through both the tournaments, the live events, and that. And so walking that really becomes, it's no different than the matchmaking we turn around. Is can we essentially provide that good counseling from our side on that?
Do you think whoever's operating the live event, the operator, is more likely to get the kind of approval or sign off that they need if it's Scott and Paige who walk into Activision Blizzard or Nintendo's offices versus Paul and Jimmy?
Yes, 100%. It's all about us. You need us.
Honest answer. I love it. One last question on this note, actually. The question Jimmy and I get all the time is, people who want to be esports entrepreneurs who maybe want to start their own little center or do some kind of startup in the gaming space. What's the first piece of advice you would give those people, other than call Scott and Paige at KJK? Because that's obviously, we'll call that the first piece of advice. What's the second piece of advice that you would give them?
Have money. No, fundamentally, I tell the same. I say the same thing every time. Do start with due diligence, right? Really work on whatever it is. If it's your business, starting a LAN center, really know before you come to Paige or I or anyone for that next piece of advice. Know what it is that you want to actually build, whether it's a business, a LAN center, you're a content creator and want to start your own thing. Really know what that is, and then it makes everyone else's job to assist you that much easier in that. And I think that starts at really, really digging deep into sort of research as to like for a LAN center, what's that cost, program, all of those things. Really begin to form that idea before, and I think you will be leaps and bounds ahead of not just esports entrepreneurs, all entrepreneurs, quite frankly, in that sense. So
I take it the route of starting off with making it being a cautionary type thing of, I would say, so Scott said due diligence, but I would also say be skeptical of anyone who guarantees something. I feel like we've come across so many salesmen in this industry where I want to be like, this is brand new on the bleeding edge. What are you talking about? You can guarantee something. You can't guarantee anything. And so I think that's always my first red flag whenever someone's just like, I can do this, guaranteed 100%. Here's exactly what I'm going to achieve for you. And as soon as someone comes to you it that way, I'm just like, they're going to achieve nothing. And you're going to end up really disappointed in 6 months.
Such good advice, guys. I want to move on. I want to do everyone's favorite new segment. I don't have my soundboard here, unfortunately, but it's still everyone's favorite segment, and that's the Honorable Judge Jimmy Baratta's cross-examination. What's going to happen here, if you're new to the podcast, Judge Jimmy's going to ask Scott and Paige 2 or 3, maybe 4 quick rapid-fire questions. We're looking to get insight into who you are as people, as gamers, sort of get behind the curtain here and get to know you a bit better. Judge Jimmy, take it away.
Thanks, guys. Paige, I love this one's first one's inspired by your anecdote about fighting over Sega at the start of the segment. And this is, let's go Paige and then Scott and then back to me. For starters, all time, anytime, favorite video game or console?
Favorite video game, I'm going to have to throw it way, way back because I recently found my childhood Sega and actually set it up at my current house. And so I've been playing Aladdin and doing the thing where I even look up cheat codes, and like have to write down like codes of when I stop so I can put it back in to start the game in the same spot.
Classic.
So I think, from a console side, I'd say, I've been playing PlayStation for a long time, but to rival Paige's sort of old school story, and since I have a little more age than she did, I can remember playing Nintendo and fitting to the movie that just came out, playing Top Gun on Nintendo. I was such an old school kid, though. I loved the movie Iron Eagle too, so I would literally strap my Walkman to my leg and listen to music while I played Top Gun and try to knock down the MiG-28s or whatever version of that enemy there. So, but right now, I would say NBA 2K is probably my go-to.
We'll love the throwbacks, guys.
Very good plug for the new Top Gun movie too.
He's paid for that. No.
Yeah. I was gonna say the client.
Today's episode is brought to you by.
Let's go back to you, Paige, for this one. Same kind of circumstance, old school or current. You guys are playing. You're playing Aladdin or your favorite game. What's your go-to gamer snack or drink?
Go-to snack. I just have to go straight. I'm sweets all the way. So chocolate in some form, be it Reese cups, probably the mini Reese's. That's what I'll go with.
Best work, right?
They're just ready, no foil.
Yeah.
Scott, up to you.
Oh, I think that ultimately, I'm a good with a Cool Ranch Dorito or Cool Ranch Dorito. I've just got my daughter into eating Funyuns. That was like an old school thing that I used to eat, and then I started eating them again while I was playing, and I'm like, I was a big Funyuns and Mountain Dew guy. But generally now it's more like Coke Zero and a Funyun and sort.
I'm the one originally from West Virginia, but you're answering Funyuns and Mountain Dew. So right. I would like that. No, you're from Ohio. I'm from West Virginia, but I didn't bring up Mountain Dew today.
Right. Both, by the way, Doritos and Mountain Dew, both big sponsors of gaming and esports, right? They spend a lot of money sponsoring teams and players. Sorry,
I don't think there's any truer gamer drink or snack than Funyuns and Mountain Dew. Those are great.
I was going to say though, between the Reese's peanut butter cups and the Funyuns, no one's playing for very long without getting their keyboard or their controller very
At least it's not Cheetos. I'm not like licking my fingers and then playing on the keyboard.
Let's end on a serious one. Back to you, Paige. If you could go back to school, what class or major would you pursue that would help you with what you do today?
Oh, wow. I would do some straight up business classes or MBA or something like that. I'm a psych undergrad and then obviously went to law school. And I took a lot of business classes in law school that helped and prepared me along the way. But I also felt like an idiot a lot of the time coming out of law school, with even probably Scott himself saying words to me where I'd be like, I need to Google that later to even see what we're talking about. What is a SaaS? Things like that, where I'm just like, what are you talking? What is EBITDA? Like going back and realizing the things I've taught myself along the way or taught or learned from people I work with. That's what I wish I would have gotten into sooner.
So solid advice. How about yourself, Scott?
Much like Paige, I came from, I'm a lawyer by training. I came from a political science background in undergrad. So I think, I would have, looked more of a business marketing with regard to that. Paige raises an interesting topic. My original thought when I heard the question would have been, psychology to some extent. I thought would have been a great additive to what we do when we're talking to people. Just kind of knowing their psyches a little bit more, I think, would be helpful.
Yeah, I would even go on to the marketing was a good one. I have a best friend with a marketing degree, and she's a genius at it, has her own business, things like that, where all the time I'm coming to her with issues and she's like, you just need to do X and Y and Z. This is your primary customer. Like things like that, where I'm just like, oh, I just need to learn to think like you do.
I think, yeah. It's funny how that list grows, because when you just said that, I'm like, the amount that we talk about coding and design and all that, I'm like, that would be
ending.
really helpful at some days to know a lot more than we do.
So basically, Judge Jimmy, you just showed us how stupid we are and how we both need more to learn more.
Don't worry, we'll edit all this out of the episode. All right. Well, that's it for me, guys. Thanks so much for coming on. Back to you, Paul.
Guys, for our listeners who want to find out more about KJK, who want to follow you guys, follow the firm, or like, how can you guys be found or followed? Where can people reach out?
I think the best place to find, us is, one, you can go to our website at kjk.com. Ultimately, we have both our profiles on there. And then really, from a social aspect, the best way to get to me is through my LinkedIn. It's just Scott Norcross on LinkedIn. With regard to that, and then old fashioned, you can always email me at san@kjk.com.
Yeah, I would.
On you, Paige?
Yeah, I would say pretty much the same. Email at pmr@kjk.com. M, not in. M is in Mancy. And I would say LinkedIn, probably my second big one. And even if you wanted to go on Twitter or Instagram, there's no one with the last name Rabatin. So as long as you're spelling it right, Rabatin, you can find me on basically anything.
I love that. And definitely, from my point of view, all of our listeners should be reaching out. Anyone operating a business in the space, I think there's always value to be had by talking to people as well connected and insightful as the two of you. So huge encouragement to our audience to go check out kjk.com and to reach out to Scott and Paige. Just a couple of housekeeping points, guys, before we wrap up this episode. If you love Paige on this and you just can't get enough of Paige, go listen to our sister podcast. Go subscribe to Meta Woman. Episode 17, Paige was on there. Incredible episode. Highly recommend everyone go checking that out. Also, make sure to follow and subscribe to Business of Esports everywhere, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on Instagram, literally on YouTube, on every single platform, Business of Esports, everywhere you find us. We really appreciate it, guys. Scott, thank you so much. Paige, thank you so much. Jimmy, thank you as always. To our listeners, remember the most important thing, the future is fun. We'll see you guys next week.